Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining City and Guild's second Google Hangout. We had our first one not that long ago, where we had a very good following, didn't we, Brian? After we went on where we had Bob Harrison talking with us about the imminent FELTAG report with the government response from the Minister Matthew Hancock. But here today, I'm joined again by Brian Mathers, who is our City and Guild's learning technology consultant expert and also the inside man on the job at FELTAG. So I'll be getting some views from Brian later. But I'm delighted that I'm also joined by Yusuf Fudar at Warwickshire. Yusuf is the CTO at Warwickshire, and many of you will join today will be probably know from Yusuf and be aware of all the leading innovation work that he has been and is doing, and we'll come on to that later. And I'm delighted also to be joined by Cheryl Pennington, who is the assistant principal for Reading College, which is also part of the Activate group of colleges. So Yusuf, Cheryl, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Delighted to have you with us. As I mentioned earlier, this is our second Google Hangout. The first one was with Bob Harrison, when we really wanted to start to really some of the issues that we thought would be coming out of the FELTAG recommendations. I suppose the story so far is there's been lots of noise in this year, which is great. A lot of people, the sector, waking up to generally the genuine opportunities that learning technology can play for us in delivering a new and differentiated skills and education agenda, especially across FE. We then had the FELTAG government response in June. We then had our own City and Guild's digital principals event, which was very well attended, where we started to get under the issues around leadership and management that are required to support bringing digital into the classroom. We also published a report on, it's called the Technology and FE report, which actually started to look at tutor attitudes and capabilities. Some fantastic and fascinating findings in there. Some real surprises actually about just how much tutors are already embracing technology in the classroom, but also some of the barriers that they face. So on the surface, you might argue there's already a lot of the right noise going on, but what's really happening on the ground, and how much will the government's response to FELTAG really help drive us forward? I'm going to go straight over really to one of the key, I think one of the most important findings actually, or recommendations I should say, of the FELTAG report, which is the fact that it's now a statement that 10% should be online by 2015-16, moving with incentives to 50% of learning delivered online by 2017. Cheryl, from your perspective over at Reading and across the whole Activate group of colleges, what do you make of that, and what are you doing anyway that you believe would contribute to that 10%?
I certainly think the targets are challenging, but having said that, what we're doing is sort of moving in the right direction. We have been using and experimenting with Google Apps for quite some time now, and we're using those now completely across Reading from September, and we're using communities across Activate Learning. So we're linking our colleagues in, for example, English and Maths, to share good practice across all 3 colleges that form part of Activate. We have also really embracing Google Sites and Google communities, student-led Google communities, to take learning forward. And I can see within certain courses, those targets will be easily achievable and achievable more quickly. But having said that, there will also be some courses that have a further distance to travel. So whether it'll be a differentiated approach, I think certainly from our side is the way.
I mean, would that almost sounds to me that you may already be doing your 10%. So if you potentially are, how much further do you think you could push the boundary so that you would already be a sort of a leading light in terms of taking that even beyond?
I think we could push it far more, absolutely far more. I mean, I feel we're on a cusp, really. We've taken about 18 months of real innovation to have a real culture change and a mindset change to move from a more analog to digital approach. But we're on the cusp of, I think, a complete revolution in our learning and our learning approach. And I think there's so much potential. And from the students' perspective, what it brings to their learning and development and skills, digital literacy skills, collaborative learning, is phenomenal.
That's great to hear. Thanks for that, Cheryl, and we'll come back and touch on some of those points. But I'd just like to go over to Yusuf now. You use the word revolution, and here is a man who I think certainly has done a lot himself to do some revolutionising in learning technology. So Yusuf, what's your take on the same point that we've just been talking about with Cheryl?
Well, Kirsty, thank you very much, and it's great to be hanging out with you today to talk about the FELTAG report. I think from my perspective, it's defining the 10%. I've been in education for about 13 years, and I've seen reports come and go, very, very generic terms, and this is the first one that comes with specific numbers and targets to talk about going forward, and that 10% got everyone talking. If you think about it, it's just one bullet point, but everyone is always referring to it. What's very important is defining that 10%. And for me, defining the 10% is all colleges use Blackboard, Moodle, other VLEs, and have all their content, almost all their contents online. Does that mean we've actually got contents more than 10% of the contents online? I think we do. I think the tricky bit here is not actually putting the content online. There are two very important bits here. First, is the stuff that we put online, is it kind of recent technology that allows learners to access it from any device using their smartphones, etc.? And that's a big, massive challenge for a lot of colleges that they have to think about and think of how to doing. A lot of colleges still use very older technology that will probably be only accessible on a desktop with specific software. And we need to move, if we're going to be serious about online learning, the term, anytime, anywhere, any device is very, very important. So that's an important element here. But the second one is assessment. And for a course to be completely online, it's how do you do the assessment? And if the assessment still depends on a teacher, a human, if you think about it, sitting there marking it, we still have a problem. We haven't moved online.
Yeah.
And assessment, there's a number of things that need to take place. First of all, from awarding bodies, do the units, because I don't believe every single unit can be completely online. But the units that we try to put online, if the assessment does not help you, then we will never achieve that target. So that is a very important element. How do we do online assessment so that so think about it, a college can take 1 or 2 units on a course, completely put them online with the assessment, so students can go at any time, start, stop, and and by the end of it, achieve it.
And I completely accept that challenge, both sitting here, as part of Sitting Guilds and awarding body, as well as I agree with you. That's a very important aspect to the overall recommendations and success of the outputs. What I would say, Yusuf, and I know it was something, and we'll come to Brian in a moment, I know it was something that was specifically a concern as the responses were being built around the FELTAG report. It's not just the awarding organisations, of course, it's around the regulation. There's a whole host of other things that need to change and adapt, but I absolutely agree with you. And I know at the end you're going to give us a little peek into some of the future about how assessment could be done online, but we'll come back to that in a moment. But we certainly at Sitting Guilds constantly looking at different ways that we can push those boundaries in order to support that very aspect. By the way, I should have said right at the beginning, please do submit your questions as we go through this hangout, and we'll do our best to come back to them. So please do that. Brian, what's your perspective on this whole 10% and beyond?
Yeah, well, I think Yusuf makes a good point there in terms of the coupling between learning and assessment, because I think you can split the report up into almost 2 categories. One category of what actually can be done, and the other category of what's more difficult to do, and what can we encourage to be done. And certainly, online learning is obviously offers efficiency. And with it, with that respect, it's drawn some criticism that it could that the response has been so definite in terms of so much by a certain point. Yeah. But I think everybody would agree that that's where innovation needs to occur. We need to get better at producing learning at an efficient cost. There needs to be innovation around that online learning, and again, just in tandem with what Yusuf's saying there in terms of how it's consumed, on which devices and when it's consumed. But on the other side of that, the report does talk about encouraging awarding bodies to step towards more and more being online assessed where appropriate. And again, the government response also mentions open badges and almost points to that as could innovation around open badges be one of the ways where appropriate assessment takes place in an authenticated way out in the field. I think that's
so we're really talking about building momentum, which I think was the other point that Yusuf said. It's like we've the government have got hold of a target, 10% now, 50 moving to 50% down the line.
Yep.
That creates momentum. You can look at it, your glass is half full or it's half
That's
empty.
right.
But the point is change, and I think Cheryl made a very, very important point before, that change is here, it's happening, and we just have to keep pushing it forward. I suppose one of the things that does interest me, though, is there's no new money in this. I mean, the government didn't say anything about there being new money to drive this innovation. So this is about finding better ways and being more creative, both as a collective sector, but also individually in each of our institutions.
And even the new money angle is a tricky one, because it would probably be the first criticism that you have of the government's response. That there's a little bit of new money. I think it was £5 million for JISC's JAMA.
Yeah, but somebody might spend that on a white smartboard, and what benefit will that do?
Well, true. But I think it improves certainly broadband capability for institutions who have access to JAMA network, right? But almost, there is another side to it, which is how best to spend money. And as much as I've always been a fan of sort of innovation competitions, where there's prizes to be won, and then that's a good way of drawing out innovations as well as rewarding those who play. There's often not much correlation between money that governments put in and sort of step forward. You probably don't need to go much further than back to sort of...
Well, actually, just let me come on to that, although we just had a question from John Harrison. John is suggesting that, do we think it would have been better if it was not 10% of each qual, but 10% of the whole centre's offering? So I think my view of that is I don't think we've, as such yet, it has got to the point where they are actually describing it at that kind of unit level. Are they, Yusuf?
Yeah, Kirsty, I think a lot of organizations are taking this 10% literally, and I don't think we should be thinking about it that way. The 10% is an indication from the government that this is a direction we want curriculum to go. Whether it's 10% course or 10% on a center, actually anything achieved in that field is a massive milestone. But then you referred, I think you made a good point, you were talking about money and the need to do this, and a lot of institutions, once this was announced, started thinking about investing in creating courses online, etc. And I think everyone is kind of jumping the gun about what needs to be done. We have to take a step back and think about the whole experience, which is really, really important. So I'll give an example. Over the last 2 years, everyone has been talking about MOOCs. Now, I work in education. I have only met one person, which is actually Brian, who's sitting next to you, who's done a MOOC online, but I haven't come across a student or a member of staff in any other college that took a MOOC online. So there's a lot of activity, and there's a lot of talk about MOOCs. But again, if you think about it, you can still have not a great lesson with a teacher there and a group of students, and you can still have the same poor experience online. And this is what we have to think about. Having a course online doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be a great experience. So I think it's a very important thing to think about. And a lot of colleges now are going down the direction of investing in a platform. We gonna have this platform. We're gonna put this online, and we need to hire people to do it. And I think there's a lot of panic, which is probably not necessary.
And I think that's why, and I think, Yusuf, if I can just come in there, I think that's why I made a slightly scathing reference to the let's not spend $5 million on lots of white smartboards and stick them in the corner of classrooms. Let's not spend, you mentioned Vector before, Brian, let's not spend millions of pounds on learning management systems that then people go, well, what do you do with them? I mean, I think the world has moved on, thank goodness, from them, but I think you're absolutely right. Let's not create panic around this sort of target, but let's look at really practical, sensible ways in which we can just use the 10% as a notional momentum to drive forward change and innovation, which I think is what you're supporting. And on that note, I think it's interesting, another points come through, or more of a question from Paul McKillop, who is suggesting that the flipped classroom strategy could be a good starting point for those organisations who are not quite sure how to do this. And I think that's exactly what you were almost talking to, the concept of a flipped classroom there, Yusuf. Just going back to the kind of help, you mentioned GIS before, we've talked about other agencies that existed in the past like Vector. I mean, the government does make an awful lot of play about the role of GIS to really come and support colleges, and to the point about for people who don't know what to do. Is that entirely right? Are JISC actually in the best position to do that in entirety? Cheryl, could be interested in your view on that.
I mean, our experience, Kirsty, with JISC has really been more as a networking opportunity and also showcasing. We've been participated in a number of their showcase events and so on, and it's really been more about sharing practice, bringing colleagues together. But I wouldn't say that we've had more than that really from our learning experience. But nevertheless, very helpful, I think, in terms of, as I say, sharing practice.
Okay, good. And Brian, what do you think the government's intention was around promoting more access of JISC and recommending that as part of implementing these findings?
Well, I think JISC and ETF are have monies available and have resources available, and therefore essentially can be deployed in certain directions, mandated by the government. And I would echo Cheryl's comments there. Like I've always liked JISC. As individuals, I think always very happy to help. Certainly in the early days of e-portfolios, they played a really important role, I felt. But what worries me is having been to the DigiFest, the sort of digital festival that they put on a few months ago, which was really very good. But there weren't many people from FELTAG. And I worry about their relevance and their I suppose their reach is probably a better word inside FE. And there's quite a lot that they've been sort of teed up to do here.
That's my point, really.
So I think the concern's valid, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's leave behind now the target, and although again, very interestingly, Tom Greavy's put another point in about what is online content assessment resources. A very fair point. Is it about 10% of staff development? So is it about less time? I think we've probably addressed that as much as we can, which is ultimately it's about you finding where you believe you can drive efficiencies and effectiveness that actually enable a more relevant and engaged learning environment that actually deliver benefits ultimately still to the learner and indeed ultimately the employer, but also allow us to sort of take the sector forward in a way that probably does deliver on an agenda we have possibly been lagging in the past.
And Kirsty, if I can just add regarding creating the content, putting the content online, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, it would have been about employing people to come and create this material. Now we live in a world that, if I have a lesson tomorrow, I can go online and I can find whether YouTube clips, web pages, etc. And this is the great thing about living in a connected world now and using the internet. So I think we need to start opening up and looking at stuff, and it's one of the interesting things is when we talk about online, a lot of and this is my experience over the last 13 years. When you start the conversation, some staff do sometimes come and say, "Well, I create this stuff, I don't want to put it online," and my argument is, can you live without the internet? Because if you can't live without the internet, and if you have to go online to look for stuff, you're using other people's stuff. And we work in education, and we have to actually be sharing as well with the world some of the stuff that we do. I mean, one of the things is, if you think about it, we've got thousands and thousands of learning material in the college. Do you really think we're the only college in the world that produced this learning material? We'll be kidding ourselves if we thought that's the case. So we have to start, kind of sharing more content online and not being afraid of someone's going to come and steal our stuff. Because let's face it, we do go online and we do take other people's stuff, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I totally support that, and I'm glad you've just made that nice segue into one of the next areas I want to discuss. But just to really close off on that, I mean, there's 3 C's for me, which are around curation, collaboration, and community. And content for me, how we use content, how we can create it, how we can collaborate over it, how we can create a community, I think is incredibly important in actually supporting all of us who are trying to deliver this agenda, because I think that is one of the core opportunities that we have in the sector that we just haven't realised. Interestingly, and I'm not just trying to plug here, but we have just recently or about to launch a new service called Content Exchange in a few pilot areas with a few pilot colleges who've been contributing, which does exactly what you're just talking to, Yusuf, but adds that extra dimension of giving it at least a quality approval seal so that people know that they're at least using good stuff that relates directly to the topic they want to deliver on. It's almost like giving tutors their Sunday nights back when you're desperately thinking, what am I going to take into the classroom the next day to deliver some resources? Let me go to Content Exchange or some other source and find out what's available.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian, do you want to quickly come in?
It was just almost a slight concern about quality, because I think the name of the game here switches quite quickly towards, well, what makes good content, you know,
Yeah.
or even, you know, what makes good online learning and online assessment. And you know, beneath the surface of the report, there are, you know, in terms of capacity for Ofsted inspectors, you know, did they know what they're talking about when it comes to learning technology? Did they know enough? You know what I mean? Well, if you take that to the next level of, well, you know, is it going to be easy enough to sort of to show quality when it comes to online content, and will it be recognised? And maybe it's a question worth asking you guys, you know, in terms of what your perspective is on that. Is it in terms of how you show those bodies the quality of the online materials?
I can come in there, Brian. We were actually inspected as Activate Learning in December last year, and the experience was very positive. And I think it took a few days to really absorb what we were doing and how we were using it and the impact it was having on students' learning. But certainly towards the end of the week, the inspector that I was working with was very positive about how we were using it. I think he sort of recognised that it was quite sort of trailblazing, and I don't think he had seen some of the stuff that we were doing before. But certainly it was a positive experience, but always impact on students' learning and development.
Yeah, and I think that's right, and I think that does actually segue very nicely into the next area, which is about overall the leadership and the capability and the capacity inside any college to be able to deliver on this agenda. And I think we've got some points coming through on that exact point, which is what are the staff development issues that you face, and it'd be good maybe in a moment to hear from both yourself, Yusuf, and you, Cheryl, about what some of those challenges have been, because I think that genuinely is a real challenge. I mean, I mentioned before the FE and technology report that we just recently published, where it showed 59% of the tutors, I think we surveyed over 600 tutors, they'd like to understand just how what the specific support that they need in using learning technology effectively. So how have you overcome that challenge in your college, Cheryl?
Within Activate Learning, we have a development model, a staff development model called Pass It On, which is actually teacher-led. It's bottom-up development, and we have a fantastic e-learning team who do a range of sort of bite-sized sessions, online learning, discussion groups. We also have a team of students, our Go team, who actually are at the forefront of helping staff develop their skills and students develop their skills. So it's a kind of a mixed range of opportunities, but almost always internally and driven by bottom-up led models.
Excellent. So you just really got out there and tried some bottom-up models and then gone with the things that worked and continually then scaled those up. Is that essentially the approach you've taken?
Yeah, absolutely. And all of the technology we're using is browser-based, so it's accessible, it's either free or low cost. So it encourages experimentation and risk-taking with teachers, and to have a go and not be afraid to try something out. And that's developed confidence and skills.
Excellent. Yusuf, what about at Warwickshire?
Well, actually, when I was preparing for this hangout, I wrote down this, which I'll read out for you. I said, can you have a teacher that can't read or write? And we should now start asking the question, can we have a teacher who can't use technology? And there are two things here. One is teacher training. We do teacher training, and in a lot of situations, I'll give an example at my end, as teachers, as we employ new teachers, they will come to us and they will probably have some technology, needs or some training, and we found is a lot of our time and a lot of our energy is spent with them, trying to show them the tools. So part of this is this, if this can be recognized at the teacher training stage, how to prepare them with the basics, instead of saying, well, actually, this is how you teach. You stand in front in the room and do this. And then after that, when they arrive at the college, we find actually we have still a massive learning curve with them. So that's an important element. The second thing is, similar to what Cheryl has mentioned, in my career, I've always, as a teacher, for example, you get dragged into a room with your team where a consultant or someone or a senior manager stands up there and says, listen, there is a new tool, you all have to go and use it. And usually that tool is
like a whiteboard.
something like that. Oh, I can think of more exciting But it's always saying, oh, we have to do it because this is technology. And for us, what we try to do is absolutely completely different in a sense that, similar to what Cheryl has mentioned, trying to kind of encourage kind of peer networking, staff to talk. I think a big problem in sharing of good practice in organizations, that a lot of organizations have to wait for a specific day to come and showcase their stuff, and that's usually one day at the end of the year when everyone is exhausted and really want to go on a summer break. And one of the things that we brought at the college, at Warwickshire College, is kind of a staff social network, which is completely for staff. They can go and post and share good practice and share things, shout about the great success that they're having with their students. And that proved to us a massive eye-opener, because instead of me going to the staff as a senior manager say, there's this tool, use it, if actually a member of staff comes across it and says, oh, this is an amazing tool, it saved me a lot of time, and recommend it to other members of staff, it's unbelievable the impact. So I think we need, as senior management teams, actually start stepping out of this and encouraging staff to communicate and talk and share good practice and be there to support in the direction, in this new direction. So there's so many things that we can do, and I don't think we'll ever stop. We're starting a project in September where we're going to use the IT students to support staff and students.
Well, I'm glad you brought the students in, because that was going to be my next follow-on. And I think it's great that we're hearing from both of you there about some real practical examples that I very much hope people who are following this will.
Kirsty, if I just can add, I think an important thing. I think we're talking about staff and training staff. There is another thing that actually people misjudge. And always, when you talk in any college, they say kids are great with technology. Actually, that is a myth. I'll give you an example. You stand in any college, ask a student on a level 1 course, what apps do you have on your phone to improve your literacy and numeracy? And the answer usually is none. So kids might be great with using technology. However, they need a bit of direction to how to start using it differently when education. So I think part of using students, not just to educate staff, because I think we're always looking at staffs to say, oh, staff are not good, but actually students need some guidance as well. And you'll be surprised that sometimes, staff can know more, but it's that communication between staff and students.
Right, because in a way that's what I was going to ask, was how much of what you do you actually use your actual students to actually help create content, help create the momentum behind. But I think you've just sort of, from at least Warwickshire's point of view, given us an angle on that. I mean, I know when I visited Reading a while ago, Cheryl, I was very interested to see there seemed to be quite a lot of collaboration going on between the students and the tutors as part of actually you trying to create this new agenda. Is that still very much part of what you do?
Absolutely. I think we've got a long way to go, though, and I think there's huge potential for taking it forward in the future. And at Reading, we're certainly shaping our learning environments differently so that they are more collaborative. Our students are so much more involved, particularly the IT students. And as I say, we have a group called the Go Team who actually volunteer their skills and time to help other students and colleagues. But certainly it's shaping our whole kind of learning environment and the collaboration. And we've got great plans for September, but I think there's a lot more potential and a lot more we can do.
Great. Okay. Well, sticking on this issue about, I suppose culture and training and development and leadership. I mean, how much of the time that you spent inside the work of FELTAG, Brian, did you feel that, you discussed that, and how seriously was that looked at by the Minister as part of the response?
It's a tricky one, because I'm not sure everybody understands that's the whole point, really. In that, to me, if you're going to ask people to be innovative, there has to be a culture that you've created, through strong leadership that supports that innovative approach, right? And you have mentioned some of the aspects of that culture, where you need to be able to fail and have support, from people that are heading up your college, so you need that openness culture, of of sharing stuff rather than, well, I'll do this just in a cubbyhole or in a cave. Those are all important aspects of what you need to let staff go for it. Now I'm not sure that the system, in particular Ofsted and its drive towards performance, necessarily supports that, right? I'm not even sure that the Trailblazer approach supports that. And I'm worried that there might be too much emphasis on it being right first time, as opposed to, we will get there, but it's going to take a journey to get there.
And it's okay to make some mistakes along the way.
As long as they're done in a safe environment, and as long as you're all in it together, essentially, rather than a maverick approach. Would you agree with that?
I'm just going to add to Brian. It's a great point, especially with the work that I do. My biggest challenge with trying new technologies with teaching staff is that the day they have to be observed, or the day there is an Ofsted inspection, everyone wants to play it safe because we are in a culture and we've got around us that actually, if you don't get it right, it's your job. And this is, for me, is the biggest challenge, because I have some great, amazing work happening, and sometimes, you go and look at observation reports and you think, I can't see any evidence of that great work that I've seen in other sessions. And this is a big, massive thing, and I really welcomed in the report a part where it actually asked Ofsted to have a part where it talks about doing new things and innovations, etc. So this is a really important thing, and it's important for senior management teams and other colleges to encourage that it's okay to fail if you're trying something new, because you know what, you are actually trying something new. And it needs to be that support. I personally feel very lucky as the person who's got responsibility of technology, and I sit on the senior management team. So for me, it's a lot easier to make decisions like that. But I speak to colleagues in so many colleges where actually, some great innovation happening in the teaching, but there's still kind of a lack of understanding by management about this and about the future of this and how important this is. So the more support, the better.
Good, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it is about minimising the fear factor at the same time as creating the atmosphere in which it's okay for people to try these things and fail safely and then learn from them and re-pick them up. I mean, just on I suppose in a way we're touching on what currently we perceive as being one of the barriers to delivering against the FELTAG recommendations, and indeed we're calling them FELTAG recommendations. The reality is, and if I'm being honest with you, sharing one of my own, I suppose, frustrations, is that some of these are actually, yes, it's great that FELTAG have found the momentum to put them all in one place, but they are not, all of them are not new. And some of these findings and some of these recommendations, lots of organisations have already been starting to actually address some of these. I think what we've actually done is create the momentum behind pulling them all together. Right. But if you were to say, Brian, of the kind of what there was in total around 7 key areas that FELTAG really reported on, what's the one barrier, what's the one thing that you really think will get in the way of actually delivering on this agenda?
That is a tricky question. But
is it the leadership issue? Is it the kind of change of organisations and like Ofsted and Ofqual? Is it awarding body? Where are the barriers most prominent?
I'd probably like to point to areas like Ofsted and Ofqual, but I think in truth, if I was being totally honest, it comes back to leadership.
Culture.
It comes back to leadership, and then the culture that leadership sort of instills within the institution. Because the simple fact is that, as you just said, there are colleges out here, there that are doing this well. That are very digitally enabled colleges.
What we're doing about 2 now.
And I suspect the leadership within those colleges is very strong. And there are other colleges out there which does not benefit from either that leadership or that culture.
Let's go over here then. I mean, would you support what Brian said there, Cheryl, in terms of actually, although there are all of these different things we could point at, lack of funding, issues to do with regulation, etc., ultimately it does come down to culture and leadership?
I would totally agree with what Brian's saying. Certainly, in my experience, it starts with the very senior team, and in our context, the chief executive Sally Dickett's, and really it just models the whole way down. And it's also about, my challenges whenever I'm communicating with the team and so on and with staff is how do you build in technology? How do you model it? How do you showcase it? And it's important that the teams see you using technology and embracing it as well. But absolutely, and I think one of my other roles is just about taking down barriers wherever those exist, making it accessible, easy, supportive, and encouraging staff to have a go.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. And Yusuf, from your perspective?
If I can add, I think it's absolutely fine for a principal or chief executive or the governors not to understand technology. In a lot of cases there are different generations between what is actually happening now and probably senior managers, and that's absolutely fine. But the most important thing is to open up and to have someone around you, if you're a senior manager or you're a principal or chief executive, who can give you guidance and tell you about how things are. I don't expect a principal will say, actually, I really think we should have anywhere, anytime on any device, because maybe it's not their area, technology. But however, if technologies, ideas come their way about where technology is going, the most important thing is that to listen to it, and just to assure a lot of senior managers and governors, technology doesn't always mean that you spend money. I mean, a lot of the stuff that Cheryl referred to earlier in the Hangout, and a lot of stuff that I do at Workshare, actually cost us £0. Enabling me to take the resources that I have, instead of me spending it on servers, and this is the whole thing about embracing the cloud, is to buy iPads and laptops, etc., for staff, to renew the equipment, to have equipment available for the students in order for them to use it. So it doesn't always mean spending money, and hopefully that's going to be a good point that a lot of senior managers and governors take on board. Good.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to start to draw the Hangout to a close now. I think we've covered an awful lot of ground in the last 35 minutes, and there's been some incredibly useful almost hints and tips as well as insights there from two colleges who really are doing this in anger and really leading from the front. But I suppose I'd kind of just sort of like to sort of close on a bit of we look then at some of the barriers, but more of a wish, and I'll come to you last, Yusuf, just to set you up for, I think one of your wishes might be around continuing to spearhead innovation in terms of, I know you've challenged me personally offline around what we should be doing as an awarding organisation to deliver better on e-assessment and online assessment, and I absolutely totally up for that challenge. And as we touched on earlier, some of that challenge is within our organisation, some of that is around some of the regulation that we also need to influence, but I think you've got a little delight for us right at the end that we'll bring you in on. But before we do that, Brian, kind of what's your wish? We talked about the barrier there. What would be your wish?
I'll give you a very simple wish. In the report and in the response to the report, in the response to the report, there's a lot of encouragement. Right? So there's a lot of reading between the lines where we couldn't get a definitive statement on this, but we're going to work with them very hard in order to achieve it. And I would just like a little bit of a sort of a line in the sand, maybe a few months down the line, where we'll just take stock of, okay, well, let's see what has
changed. So the
100-day
plan almost.
Indeed.
Right.
So let's keep our encouragements in an accountable fashion.
Yeah.
Really, that's a problem.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a really good challenge. And actually, even if we don't get that per se from government, although it would be nice, I think perhaps that's something we in the community need to create. So, Cheryl, yourself?
I think from my perspective, for the FE sector to really embrace technology, and I think just the realization that you don't have to be a technical expert, you don't have to have a lot of money to have a go and experiment and make a difference for students' learning and their success. And I think that would be my wish, that FE does embrace it.
Great, thank you. And I suppose Yusuf, and your wish, and I suppose you might even show us your wish.
I think for me it's always, new ideas are always challenged in education, and I think we spend more time challenging ideas and saying why they can't happen compared to why they can happen. So I'll give you a very quick example. When I first started my career and I was a lecturer, we had paper registers. I remember I developed one over one Christmas, and that was Christmas 2001. I remember it. I developed this online system that enables the teacher to take the register online, and I went back to the college, and I couldn't get one manager to listen, to my idea, because they looked at me and said, why would we ever need an online register to take attendance? We already have paper. We know what happened to the argument now. But other examples, if you think about it, YouTube, when it was blocked in almost every single college. It was seen as a distraction from the classroom. Facebook and social network was seen as a distraction from a classroom.
Leave your mobiles at home, yeah.
Absolutely, switch the mobile off. We've never actually looked at the positives. And iPad now, you think about it, cameras on phones was a big, massive challenge about privacy. What happened if someone is filming someone. And now I always like to look at what's happening next. And wearable technology, we started to see this term, and basically it's technology that you wear on your hands. We've seen a lot of smartwatches, or a new thing, and I do have it for you, like this device here from Google. Is called Google Glass. And this is a wearable technology, and basically it's a computer, and you can wear it, so you can have it there. I'll look like RoboCop now. But the idea is that it's not interfering. It's not like holding a device in the way between what's happening. It's actually, I can still have that conversation with you, but I can still see the screen. I can still give it actions and instructions, etc. And if you think about it now, all the press about a device like this is privacy. Oh, what happened if someone is wearing it and filming me? And this, I'll look at this. It could be a great tool for assessment. So as a lecturer, I could be there, and I'm gonna film it if that's okay with you guys. And you give it instructions. Say, okay, Glass, record a video. And now I'm actually recording this video just like that, without actually having to do anything, and it can still take part in the practical. Now, a device like this, I'll look at it as it could be an amazing device for assessment. As a lecturer, you could be there in a practical situation. You could be recording a video. You just press this is it's a touch sensitive. You just press it, and the whole video clip goes straight to your YouTube channel, available for you, and it's recorded forever. So when you look at things like that, I'm gonna stop the video here. But when you look at this, you start having this, and all the conversations in educational circles are privacy. What happened if someone is recording someone? Yeah. And my advice is go to YouTube, record, search on YouTube a classroom, and see how many kids actually in classrooms have recorded teachers using their mobile phone without their permission. So really, it's always an argument that in my kind of work, I've always faced at the beginning. It took me a massive amount of time to try to convince people that VLE was the way forward about 10 years ago. It took me a lot of time to convince people about social media, and it's coming to a point now, a lot of people that really try to bring change are getting tired of actually saying, oh, let's have a policy, and let's have X, Y, and Z, and let's sit and debate. And sometimes a lot of great ideas die in the college before they're even born. So really my suggestion is, if you look at a kit like this and you say, okay, yes, someone could be recording me, but how can I use it in an educational environment? How can it benefit? How can it reduce the amount of time the teacher will spend on using technology compared to the teacher, sitting there uploading handouts, downloading handouts, and trying to mark work online in a very archaic way that we've been doing for the last 15 years with no innovation whatsoever.
Thanks for that, Yusuf, and I think it was great that we were able to bring you in at the end and actually give all of you who've been following this Hangout something almost if not a first, very close to a first practical illustration for many of you on wearable technology, and you do make an incredibly serious, important point that this is about us embracing it. It is about us looking for the positives in these opportunities, not always looking for the negatives, which as a sector I do unfortunately think we do tend to always do. So I think you make an incredibly important point. So I think really, I suppose from that respect, our wish would be that we stay upbeat, we stay positive, we stay committed to the momentum, we stay committed to actually trialling some of these opportunities that are out there, and not for the sake of it. Let's not remember, it's not about the tail wagging the dog, but it's so that we truly can improve the experience. Because let's be honest, it's not going to get easier out there. It's only going to get harder in terms of the barriers that we face in the sector. So on that note, thank you very, very much for inputs from both Cheryl and Yusuf. I think they were very valuable, and I hope that's made it an engaging hangout for all of you who've been following this, and also Thanks again to you, Brian, and we look forward to the next one. We will, of course, be posting this. We will, of course, even post. We'll check, Yusuf, whether that worked, that video, because you can obviously download it onto the site as well, so we can see that little wearable technology video that you created.
It's already there.
Oh, look at that! Fantastic.
But rumor has it that it will display my thoughts in text beneath the video. Is that right?
That's the next device.
Oh.
But just to say, Kirsty, thank you very much for asking me to take part in this, and I just want to say thanks to City and Guilds, because yourself as the managing director, taking part and leading this yourself helps us move forward, and I hope other awarding bodies as well look at technology in the same way, because again, we work with City and Guilds, we work with other awarding bodies. And sometimes it can be very frustrating when we are doing some great work with one awarding body, but the other one we still have to print it out on paper and post it to them to do their external verification work. So, personally, I would like to thank you. You've given me personally a lot of support in trying a lot of new ideas, because I can go to the college and say, guess what? I've got the backup of one of the biggest awarding bodies in the country. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. I do keep pushing our buttons and keep pushing our boundaries, because we've got still.
Oh, don't worry about that, Kirsty.
Right. Well, listen. That is all we've got time for. Thank you very, very much indeed, and thanks for everybody who's joined us. See you soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.